Ko Pāngawa, I'm Pamela Bell. I'm the Chief Everything Officer at Building Institute Aotearoa until at least the end of next week, at which time Kirsten Magnuson, our Deputy Chair, will be in the hot seat. So we'll be looking forward to welcoming her. I did hear someone say, yes, we have changed our name. So legally, we are New Zealand Institute of Building Incorporated, with a "the" on the front, don't forget that. And we're trading as Building Institute Aotearoa from 1st of April this year. Come in and grab some food and drink, and if you don't mind registering through the QR code. Thanks, folks. Awesome. So we're here today with these incredibly smart people to talk about navigating industry guidance and contract updates. It's not your favourite subject. Don't worry, we're going to make it very interesting. We're going to bring it to life, and we're going to make sure you've got food and drink and hydration along the way. We'll stop in the middle and have a wee break, but this is an interactive opportunity, and we'll grab your questions, that kind of thing. And actually, first, pretty soon, we're going to do a little bit of whiteboard stuff to just capture what interested you or made you curious about coming here. So maybe have a wee think what question or curiosity might be. Just to let you know a couple of things that are happening locally. We have got September 18th, a visit to the Fisher and Paykel purpose-built global HQ. I believe there might be timber in that building. Am I correct, Jamie? Good, glad, because that's why I'm going to be turning up. So that'll be good fun. That's next Thursday, I think, the 18th. And then our next Building Legends is, and that's about managing teams through uncertainty and complexity. If you can imagine what that kind of time might be like, might look a little bit like now and the next 12 months. So that's a good one to keep on your radar. A couple of thank yous. We are a non-profit organisation, so we only be able to do our mahi by working with partners. Building Legends, we partner with Carters, so thanks very much to Carters. And today, to High Performance Centre. Jim, thank you very much. It's great to be here. We know you've got lots of interesting gizmos all around us, so apart from the digital golf, so we'll make sure if there's something we're interested in, we can grab Jim, not just for your excellent barista skills, and also Harriet at the room, official photographer. Also want to introduce Louise from Perpetua Productions, who is doing the recordings for us. Awesome. Now, as with any good story, there's always a legal opt-out, right? So the conversations and anecdotes and stories that we're going to hear, and it goes both ways, folks, are under Chatham House rules, which means we can talk about the learnings outside this room, but we just don't talk about the origin and where they're from. Yeah. I'd also like to acknowledge two of our Northern Region Committee members, Donna and Jamie. Thanks for coming, folks. Now, on to the real stars of the show. We've got 5 guests today, and we've got a really lovely broad mix of legal, project management and executive director cross pan-industry experience. So a lot of perspectives around regulation and contracts. So I'm going to let folks introduce themselves, if you wouldn't mind saying your name and your role. And what they're doing is modelling what we will soon do with you too. So do you want to just grab the mic there? We'll kick off with you, Darragh.
Hello. My name is Darragh O'Connor. I work for the Building Intelligence Group. I'm a project director there for contract management, and I carry out the role of engineer to contract predominantly within TBIG.
Hi there, I'm Jordan Ropati. I'm a construction lawyer at Greenwood Roche, focusing predominantly on the front end, negotiating, drafting, occasional project delivery. Not disputing to avoid that, but yeah.
Hi, I'm Jo Hatchman, founder and director of Hatch Consulting. We specialise in providing collaborative and practical quantity surveying, anything from power stations through to grounds. So, should be some interesting discussion for the day.
Hello, my name is Raji. I am the director of a very newly formed company, so I still mess up with introducing myself. So I consulting. We are client-side project managers. We do a little bit front end even before when a project becomes a project, agreement to lease, right way through the scoping, design, coordination, consent, and through the construction. Presently inclined on commercial and interior space, but some data centers and some odd bits here and there. Looking forward to a good discussion.
Kia ora, Tommy Honey, Executive Director of NZCIC, the New Zealand Construction Council, the home of the guidelines and many other things, and maybe later I'll get a chance to talk a bit more about the scope and breadth of what we do. But it's my job to... Camera, there we go.
Get stuff done. Awesome. Okay, so now you've seen how it's done. We're going to switch over to you guys. What I would love is just to hear from you about what you're curious about and what you want to learn. As I reach my pen, which I had stored. Now, Mr. Paul Stiles, nice to see you. Now, what today other than a free cookie? Ever learning. Ever learning's good. So you're hoping to learn something new. That's what I'm hearing. Okay. Awesome. You know what? I'm going to pass the mic. If you could just say your name and your role in the industry and what it is you're curious about today.
Sorry, I've got a scratchy throat. My name is from Code Community Housing. I work as a... So today I'm here to obviously learn something new and be within industry professionals and learn from their stories. That's what I'm here for. Forward to the session.
Hi, I'm Fuad El Shekani from FC International. I'm a delay expert, and I'm here because of the topic and always interested to see different perception of contracts. So it's going to be good. Yes.
Kia ora everybody, Juliana. I'm a professional teaching fellow at the University of Auckland Faculty of Architecture. I segued into project management, luxury project management for Billionaires Offshore a couple of years ago. And I practice architecture on a periphery in an academic pursuit. Yeah.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Mahesh. I work with Code Community Housing as a development manager. We are a non-profit charitable trust that provide social housing for people on low income. I'm here to learn about contracts as the topic suggests, but specifically, I guess, how we can make those contracts more collaborative rather than, I guess, so yeah, keen to hear experts' opinions on that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Robbie from Commercial Manager at Savoury Construction, and yeah, here to learn about changes to 3910 and contracts. Yeah.
Yeah, g'day, Scott Ward, Senior QS at Savoury Construction. Again, keen to learn more about the update, and I propose a question as to why we're not 3910 being used. I think we've got 3 or 4 tenders on go at the moment, and they're still sticking with 2013. So.
Oh, hi everyone, Chris Hooper from Savoury Construction, pre-construction manager, and here to learn about the contract updates as well.
Yep, Hayden Shank, Savoury, limited exposure to contracts to date, so yeah, any info is good today.
My name is Kieran Tuhi, and I am a project manager at Savoury's. Just continuous learning.
Yep, Rob Miller from Simon I, a subcontractor and manager, and just curious and want to learn a bit more.
I'm Ali Johar. I'm from Crescent Construction. I'm a QS. And the contract part. Oh, sorry. I thought we...
Hello, I'm Jamie Summers. So I'm here today. I'm keen to learn about the updates to the contract and really keen to hear about design liability in the new contract.
My name's James Hinchco. I'm the area sales manager for Carter's. Keen to get an understanding of Institute and also a bigger understanding of the industry that I'm a part of on a day-to-day basis. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Scott Logie. I'm a principal. I'm here to just hear the stories and pick up on any behaviours of the different roles and responsibilities of contract administrators. Thank you. I was a cadet in New Zealand about 33 years ago. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from Tauranga, so I'm here today because it fell in really nicely with a work trip seeing some clients, so I actually get to the seminar. Very interested to have some good chats about all of the things that we've spoken about and make some really good connections while I'm here. Oh, and I work predominantly as a project manager.
Hi, my name is Shah, Senior Project Manager with TBIG, and here to learn about the new contract and what's working well, what could have been better, or what's not working well and what was better in the previous contract.
Hi everyone, my name's Jan. I'm a director of Vastra, here to support Raji, with partners. I think I'm more interested in the NZCIC guidelines because I think all project managers can do better. So very interested in hear more.
Fantastic. So a good showing from the project management cohorts. Almost everyone's name one way or another. Still very curious about the delay expert, but I'm sure we'll hear more. Yeah. Awesome. So let's jump into some content. We will circle back to that list at the end to make sure that we've ticked everything off. All right. Over to you, Jordan.
First topic is talking about contractual risk management and how to avoid getting locked into unfavourable terms. Now, it's a little bit cynical for a lawyer to say this, but I've come to the conclusion that, contractual terms aren't going to make a difference as to whether you're going to have a successful project or not. They typically will make a difference as to whether you will have a bad outcome on the party that you are. But the most important thing on any project is the people you have involved. We often we act for clients, contractors, consultants, and you'll have any of these things like these or other things where there'll be a lot of chat around different contractual forms, avoiding 700 pages of special conditions and all of this sort of stuff. But my view, regardless of what's signed up, if you have people that don't know, one, what they're procuring, two, why they should allocate risk the way they should do it, three, know how to design things, and four, know how to deliver things, and there's probably a five, then terms don't matter. But assuming we've got that under control, I'll go into a bit of detail on the other items. So the second bullet point I've got up here is, where a lot of our projects, where we tend to get into disputes or see disputes arising between clients, contractors, it tends to be where there's a misalignment of expectations. So we'll have clients who will procure and sign up to a contract thinking they're going to get one thing. We have contractors signing up thinking they're going to get something else. Within clients, and this comes back to my point, see? Oops. It could be insurance also. Yeah, what we often see is a lot of it comes down to human behaviours. You have clients on the client side, you have people that don't know how to manage again, I'll jump from various topics and muses to a number of my frustrations in practice. When I act for clients, I mean, what we see a lot of the time is there's often a disconnect between what you have with delivery, and this is often with government clients, not to call them out in particular, on the delivery side and what you'll have up the chain within management. And often in management they think that they've got a budget, the budget's been signed off. Delivery, they might not report the full extent of the contract will reflect retained risk. Management will think that they've got a fixed price lump sum contract, it won't change for anything. Contractors claim variations, you often end up in dispute. I mean, it's a very 101 point, but we often see issues with that. Another area of disconnect, particularly with, particularly with contracts that run over a long period of time, you have changing personnel at the client. I mean, there's a difference between, what they say first, maybe 3 years later. They'll then go to the lawyer 3 years later to ask, well, what do these terms mean? And they'll often interpret it to be something entirely different to what the party signed up on day one. And sometimes there's a few things, but one might be a misalignment between the legal terms and the special conditions and what's in the tag schedule. The parties, when they signed the contract in 2021, contemplated that the contract for various items, but the legal conditions don't or haven't been updated to reflect that. The parties, if you ask the parties what they signed up to on day one, they'd say, oh, we signed up to what was in the tag schedule. If you ask the parties what they signed up to in 2025 when they go to their lawyers, they'll go, oh, well, the priority of documents prevails. This is what we signed up to. Yeah. What else do we have? Next thing is actual terms. Ultimately, the key to having contractual risk allocation is understanding what you've signed up to. We'll get into a bit more detail onto specifics in some of the next slides, stating the obvious. And the other part, which coming to a contractual administration and QS perspective, what we often see, and one of the key areas we see clients fall over, and I'm assuming main contractors will have possibly, is falling foul of CCA. Particularly when a company's gone insolvent and you have the insolvency practitioner coming in and throwing 700 payment claims for everything under the sun, and they're not responding within the right. So having a strong understanding of the CCA, how it applies to the payment claim, payment schedule process, and now the retentions regime, and I'm happy to take any questions people have on that throughout the session. Next point, administration, and again we'll get into the details on that. And finally, money. I mean, a lot of people ask me, like, what sort of construction law do you do? And I say, and they ask, well, what does that entail? I say, until maybe the last 4 or 5 years, it only entailed drafting contracts. In your 700 pages of special conditions, you'd often have me to thank, or maybe a few less for me. It was 97. Oh, yeah, I was going to. Yeah, well, a few more for that. That's why no one's taking it up. What I say is, up until about 2021, I mean, my role was largely sign the contract. The engineer would assure me that the contract's gone in the drawer. They don't see me again. I'm happy. My drafting's not being tested. I'm not nervous about it. Life is good. Life is the last 4 years. I blame that last bullet point. It's bloody money. There's been less money circulating in the economy. The recession's obviously come in. I'll give Kaingora as a good example. I mean, a lot of money, a lot of build partners, the government change of government has resulted in a big cut in that area. Where previously there was a lot of money, big build pipeline, a lot of runway to, commercial decisions, etc. Contractors would have a pipeline, they could take a view, they didn't need to be contractual, it could protect the relationship. I mean, that has largely gone away because there isn't the ability, there isn't that, you have lots and lots of variations to pay out. Projects are running out of money, and contractors don't have the pipeline, a lot of them don't anyway, to take a view on the basis that they have a pipeline. So there is of asking, what does the contract say? I said, well, you haven't cared about that for the last 10 years, now you do. I don't know. just so yeah, money bearing on whether you can put the contract in the drawer. I mean, I should never say you should never entirely put it in the drawer, but again, if you no, never ever, or else you'll get the litigators poring over it. But yeah, I do think it makes a difference. A lot of this will contemplate and assume an economy that has less money and more contractual people. So yes.
All right. Did anyone have any questions around CCA or any of those other points? No? Okay, well we might, I was really interested, Jordan, you said that a contract, what makes a project successful? It's not the, is there some mystery there about the trust or the team or the clients perhaps that we might learn about?
Well, there's a practical aspect that the contract's not going to build the building. I mean, that's what's probably. And number two would be, and I've got an example of this. I won't give an entire example, but I'll have a client recently come to me regarding getting access to site when they haven't allowed for it. The contractor hasn't allowed for. We've got a refurb ongoing. They want to get another specialist, separate contractor involved to do up another part. They're operating within the main contractor's site. The client didn't allow for this in the original document, so when it went out, the contractor allowed for this within their site and health and safety plan and all of this sort of stuff. The words of the contract say, look, you want non-exclusive possession, you have to comply with the ETC's instructions, you have to do. And I could tell the client, if I could go ahead and say, oh, well, you can tell the client to do whatever you say. I mean, I know in reality what will happen will be, well, the contractor, well, I mean, I won't say fabricate because all contractors in the room, so I don't never say that. I know in reality that they come up with a solution that doesn't work for their contractor or their build partner. It's not going to work in their best interest. The contractor will work against them. They'll seize up. The best solutions won't come up. So that's what I mean. One example. Not buildings, another example. And yeah, those are probably the main ones. I think just practically, you need people. You need designers, you need builders to build it. You need subbies that have the specialist supply chain. And regardless, I mean, contracts are only as good as the balance sheet. And in New Zealand, no one has a absolutely mammoth balance sheet, bar Fletchers, and anyway, so that's kind of it. Yeah, some contracts end up being basically toilet paper. So, okay.
Yep, great. What do we need to know around clients?
Right. So for the client side in the room, and again, this will apply for main contractors going downstream to some extent, and yeah. So we've got 3 slides. One's for contractors, one's for consultants, and what they're aimed at is just a few key points to take away when going into contracts. My first one for clients is that I mean, the must be suited for the project. The reality is often they're not, and I mean there are many reasons for this. I mean, when you're dealing with bulk procurers, they don't have the time and resources to bespoke everything for every job, and just in how humans operate and how governance operates, they're always, unless they can facilitate some weird and wacky construction management or some other alliancing model, which most procurers in New Zealand cannot do outside of NZCA, they're going to stick to what they perceive as the safe option is often what they perceive to be the least likely to result in cost blowouts or any risk coming back to them, or any risk that will result in them being at risk of losing their job or being perceived to be, which often they're not. It's just they're not delivered against some fictitious project budget. So in an ideal world, a project would be suited for its terms. You wouldn't be rolling out terms designed for a project for a refurb. You wouldn't be likewise, you wouldn't be doing a refurb for a new build. 3910 unamended may occasionally be suitable for certain projects, but I would only say that on the basis that both parties are fully aware of what 3910 actually does and doesn't do, and provided both parties know exactly the ins and outs and they're comfortable with that, I would say no amendments are fine. The issue is often parties don't. I mean, just don't know. I mean, I'll confess, I learn something new about 3910 most days anyway. So yeah, in an ideal world, the terms would be suited for the project and the market. And with the market, I mean, in a hot market where there's less, or contractors are harder to get and harder to access, I mean, the reality for procurers is the amount of risk they can push on is a lot less. In a market where it's a harder market, they can push on more. Whether it's right or wrong, I would say to clients, if you're going to push this risk, I mean, there's a good chance you're going to scare off contractors. I mean, the same might apply down the chain. Market, adequate resources adequately appointed to administer contracts. Yeah, key issue we often find is you go into these projects again and there's not adequate resource to actually administer. Contractors will come up with RFIs, they're unresponded to. I mean, and then the contract terms almost go out the window because the contract's not being administered as it needs to be. And yeah, so that would be another one. So if you, third point regarding retained risk, generally speaking, the more retained risk you take as a client, the more resource you're going to need to allocate to administering your contract, because the reality is there is more risk. There's greater variations, greater things you have to do. But again, this comes to my point why I described alliancing and collaborating. I don't actually think they're wacky or any of that sort of stuff. I just think a lot of clients don't have the resource to administer a project, a contract that isn't fixed price lump sum or DMB or something like that, because they just don't have it. Yeah. Any questions or anything else to add? Okay. Contractors. Now, I often, by default, go to clients as my default settings. Being a front-end lawyer, most of my clients on to be principal side. That's often because contractors tend to only get lawyers involved in, well, if they can avoid it, and also if something goes wrong. So a lot of the contractors are contractors. And actually, I should actually throw out to the commercial managers in the room, they can often negotiate the contracts a lot better than the construction lawyers, so they don't need us. However, for the contractors that we have dealt with, and this is overseas, I found a lot of the ones that have been able to do it themselves without legal involvement have often developed a top 10 or top 20 checklist or a traffic light review system. So any contract comes in, they have to, and they might get to develop this particular document, but they have a list of top 10, top 20 or red light items that as a matter of course they won't accept, or they won't accept without, you know, governance approval or extreme consideration or certain concessions. And I can take, I'm happy to or whatever on that, but if I was to throw out, I mean, a few key ones that you would always look at, or ones I've had previously from contractors, there would be obviously any indemnities that go beyond the standard indemnities. However, I mean, 391 until the 2023 one is actually much better, but the 2013 and earlier had the widest indemnity I think I've ever seen. Yeah, and the contractor indemnifies the principal for everything under the sun, and no one's ever blinked an eyelid about this. Anyway, indemnities, that's one. Liability caps, and I expect that's going to come on the radar more commonly. And actually, just to touch on a question from the Savoury guys as to, and we'll feed into 3910. But one of the reasons I suspect clients haven't taken it, other than not wanting to pay lawyers, is the new 3910 2023 contains a liability cap by default. Once that liability cap's in there, it's harder to say no. It's harder to take something out than put it, or it not be in there. So I think, and I was about to say, I'll deny when I give my advice to clients regarding this, but I'll just confirm it anyway. when they ask me, Jordan, should I adopt the new 2023 version, one of the things I will point out to them is that it does contain a liability cap. So if you do, you are going to have these discussions from the get-go. I also do say to them, I mean, it's up to you. You're going to need to start doing it when all the contractors start pushing for it. So if all the contractors start pushing for it, they'll get away with it for as long as they can. They'll get away with paying us for the template updates, and they'll get away with giving you a liability cap until you guys push for it, basically. And contract administrators likewise. So is that other top 10, top 20 we'll get into in more detail. So condition precedents, I mean anything that denies your time and cost entitlement, unworkable conditions. We've got other slides. Contractors, other solutions, I can say from acting from both sides, points are more likely to get through if you offer some sort of proactive solution which addresses the client's underlying concern. As mentioned, will take the starting position, not because there's any conscious decision making behind that, but because it's the safest position. And there's often, well, not with everyone, there's some that just won't move and the computer says no, but a lot of clients will move. Period. There will be a space between which they can move, provided you provide some alternative solution to address their issue. And final point is always consider back-to-back risk. Subbies, which may not always be possible. You've got certain suppliers that won't sign up to anything. Certain other subcontractors will be more amenable to that. But main contractors always need to be aware that they are gap risk, and this is a point we'll get on to on D&B in particular, because that's where I have seen some contractors absolutely nailed due to the mismatch risk between what you sign up for under a D&B contract and what you sign up for under your triple CS or IPENS, whatever.
I just wanted to raise a quick point for contractors as well. We've had a few where contractors haven't submitted a tender. And we've said, oh, you didn't submit, is there any reason why? And the feedback has been, well, we can't accept LDs, we don't have that level of insurance, we don't provide bonds anymore, things are a bit difficult. I just really want to make sure we encourage contractors that you could always question contract terms of clients, put the tender in and tag it out and have a conversation about it. As you were saying, most clients will be flexible. It's better to be on the table than not involved.
Yeah, and just another one on that, I think it needs to be clear that when contractors are tendering at the moment, I got told by a very wise man a few years ago, you only do two things with risk, you either tag it or price it. At the moment, it's obviously times are tough and jobs aren't happening, so then tender terms or contract terms are going to be a lot more risk adverse, and contractors will probably sign up to them as well at the moment. I think it's going to be quite interesting in a few years' time how these disputes come about from right now and last year, especially if you are signing up to a contract now where you could be put under pressure because cash flow is not there. It is tough. It's hard to define that. I know for a fact now one of New Zealand's largest principals actually got 4 contractors in a room next to each other and said, well, they're signing up to this and they're signing up to that, so what do you want? So that's a very hard position to be in. So the disputes, regardless of what contract you're going to be using, we're going to be sitting here in 4 years' time going, geez, times are tough at this stage here now, and we signed up to something we probably shouldn't have. Something internally that you guys are going to have to decide on, whether it's a subby or a contractor. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that one as well. Sorry, Jordan.
I'm glad to not speak. Cool. Consultants, yeah, consultants. Consultants don't admit the terms protect them enough as it is. It's fine. 5 times the fee. Oh well. I came back from. I practiced in the UK for 5 years, and I returned in 21. I got I think my first job I worked on. I got a set of triple CS conditions, and it was for a big project management outfit. And I thought, fuck, I cannot accept this. What is this 5 times the fee? This is absolutely insane. And James Riddoch, who is who I formerly worked for, who's doing this equivalent in Christchurch, basically said, no, mate, that's the market we work in. You can't say that. You can't get them for uncapped liability. It's not how it works here. So, yeah. Anyway, consultants. The key thing for consultants are you need to ensure that terms are within the scope of your insurance. Fitness for purpose needs to be avoided unless your insurance terms allow for it. Occasionally they do, but by default I understand they don't, and I understand they only cover loss for common law. So any terms which purport to extend your losses beyond common law damages, that's why the insurers tend to get very upset about liquidated damages clause in consultant contracts, which I haven't seen too much of, but if you do, don't sign up to them. Or maybe put your house in trust or something. Or indemnities is the other one that consultants will often avoid unless it's back to back with their PL policy, but they shouldn't be providing services, but for main contractors it often leaves at risk. Key issue I see with consultant appointments is the fee and portion, often all over the show, not aligned. I mean, this works fine if you guys got a good relationship and and you're not going to get into dispute, but if it comes to the lawyers, they'll often go to the scope and fee. You're a consultant and you want to ensure you get paid, you'll want to allocate the particular fee against a particular deliverable. Often you'll have clients come back and say, "I'm not paying for that. It's basically that." The other takeaway for consultants would be to ensure that you, like contractors do with the tags table, and I would ensure that you always get your tags, assumptions, exclusions practice for lawyers in particular to cut that out or not include it. So make sure it's in there. It's not necessarily vexatious. They've just got an aversion to referencing proposals. And that was the last point. So yeah, that's it for consultants.
Great. Did we have any questions before we jump into the fine print? I'm curious, might be already locked into a not great contract. What do we do?
I thought everyone can hear me. No? Okay. So the consultant contract, CCCS, you mentioned about the liquidity damages. Can you run through any example? I've never signed it and never seen it.
I have seen it, but it's very rare and uncommon, and most professionally advised clients understand that consultants as a market will not accept risk, and it's often not insurable, therefore they won't seek to do it. But it does happen from time to time, so I'd watch out for it. I wouldn't do it.
Okay, what should happen is consultants should be on the hook at quality of deliverable, which I think as a country the clients are hesitant to do that. Maybe not anymore, but that's where the care and the whole guardianship of the project comes in. Maybe you have seen many. I've seen the clients go, well, let's not worry about it, rather than pursuing to their insurance claim, unless it's like the building is leaked, on fire or whatever.
Yeah, most of the time that would be right. I've seen against designers have tended to be related to latent defects. I mean, unless you're acting for a main contractor and it's a result of undercooking a tender, I've seen that also. But yeah, on regular time and cost claims, I haven't. So it is a possibility. I haven't seen too many claims associated with costs going up because the contractor was, so the designer was late on giving a RFI response, or for example, yeah. But it is.
That's the pain of project manager's life.
Regarding being locked into bad contractual terms, my suggestion would be to raise it before it becomes an issue. So more open to resolving problems before they become problems. So, but it's more of an issue. I mean, if the terms reflect the commercial agreement reached, they're often reluctant, unless they fear that there is a material chance that the contractor will not be able to deliver. There's a chance that the contractor could go insolvent if they enforce the contract. 3, the cost of enforcing we're going to do because it's not worthwhile, hence why you often keep cash retentions because no one's going to go after 1 or 2 minor defects. But yeah, I would just raise it and get a variation, or try to get a variation to the terms. But that's often the case though. Tax or assumptions, clients are often willing to amend and not rely on not consciously agreed terms. But not every client's different. Not every client's the same.
Awesome. You've given us a good rundown. Darragh, were you going to give us a little bit of input?
Yeah, no, that's
okay, cool.
Okay.
Still the Jordan show?
It's still me.
Hang in there.
You're all still awake, so.
Okay.
Special conditions. So yeah, I've been to a lot of society construction law, the Accord previously, presentations where it often a key issue at the market in New Zealand is the amount of special conditions that go in. It's often cited that a lot of contractors don't have the resources to go and read significant amount of pages, and I do have some, and I do agree with that. And and again, we'll get to 3910 2023, one of the hopes was that it was going to reduce special conditions. It won't. It'll make them longer because now we have the IC and contract administrator, we've got more words to amend and do something to. But anyway, in an ideal world, and this is going back to the point mentioned earlier, clients would be rational and bespoke about every single procurement. But again, enough resource for that. And my cynical view on the world is I don't think we'll ever get to the stage where you'll have an arrangement where the terms are always well suited for the project. So when you do, unless you're in a position to tell the client, and I'm speaking from a contractor's point of view here, to get stuffed and reconsider, or lighter terms, but basically the same, you effectively do need to read them. There's no getting around that, and you do need to know what you're signing up to. And that's where, that top 20 or top 10 list would hopefully help. If you're not wanting to read it all in all, you've at least got the key items that should hopefully catastrophic failure. So if you've got 70 pages on your reporting obligations, and so be it. Yeah, understand them, get advice if needed. And again, my hope with that top 10, you don't need to go to lawyers every single time. It's a stopgap between having perfect conditions, having a lawyer review it every time, having a set of guidelines that you know, or a playbook or a top 10 that you go through every time will ensure you get the big points. This is a but I need to tell myself this. Never touch the insurance provisions without getting the broker to look at them. That's a key area, and the 3910 insurance conditions are particularly nasty. If you get, particularly for clients, often there'd be many projects where, the default position in 3910 is for the client, well, it's for both parties, but is if you don't maintain the insurance as per the terms, you lose your ability to claim against the other party, even if they're at fault, generally speaking. And a key area where I do see this in practice would be with existing buildings and the requirement of contractors as named insured. I've had many examples where clients have signed up to, and that, this rationale makes sense because you can often work on massive buildings valued at way more than the public liabilities, 10, 20, 50 maybe. You can have buildings valued at way more than that. The rationale is that the client is best placed to insure and protect the contractor in that scenario. It's often seen is clients will ignore that, they won't get the insurance input, and they will take out a policy or put it on their existing building policy, and they won't cover the contractor as named insured. by the letter of the law, the client at that puts themselves or puts their insurer in any event at risk of being unable to recover from the contractor because they haven't done as the contract required them to do. That's one example. Obviously, every contract's different and it's nuanced. It's a patient example of the importance of ensuring that the insurance matches up with the terms. Yeah, I certainly don't touch them without broker input for my own liability cover. Nasties. Now, there's no end to the amount of nasties that can be found in special conditions. Some of them are good, a lot of them are bad. But if I was to give a top 5 list that I've thought of, not much thought, priority of documents is probably number 1. It's often glazed over by people signing up to contract terms. And this is a key area where contractors can often fall into difficulty where they think they've agreed with the client directly a set of conditions in their tags, assumptions, etc. It's common practice, particularly with government procured contracts or say precinct or any of the big ones, to have contract agreement, special conditions, general conditions, depending on whether the contract is negotiated. It could be in any particular order, but it's either drawings and specs, tender, and if the contract often the tags and assumptions will sit above the drawings and specs. But the result of that is those evil legal terms will prevail over your tags and assumptions. So you need to be consciously aware of that when you sign up to it and ensure that it reflect what you signed up to. On the flip side, I often have clients, and I recall maybe the new 3910 2023 by default puts post-tender documents above. Now I had to defer to the experts on 3910 2023 because it isn't me, because none of our clients want to pay us to do it. Although I have worked on I have worked on it on a few, but from memory, I think they put the post above the legals. So from a client's perspective, a key issue is to make sure that specials sit above those, unless you're acting for a contractor then. The tags at the top. So just make sure documents, and then obviously check drawings sit above the specifications. I don't know I don't know if it's made to the slides, but I often find, the special conditions often get a bad rap, but I find the P&G specs than the specials. These project managers. Yeah. So make sure if you're a contractor, they sit sufficiently low, client sufficiently high. Now the next one, condition press. Now this is an area that often came up with the Accord. It's quite common for contracts to be amended to contain hard time bars on money claims, and then those time bars are split into other time bars between notification and substantiation. There are very extreme views on this, and I often can take the very extreme views based on what side of so I can be aggrieved either way. But clients, you guys, a lot of you would have heard this, their perspective or view on this is their concern that contractors will save up all the claims until final account. They don't have their condition precedent clause in there. Concerns are it can result in, it's a few things. One, it's impractical. Two, it's unworkable, particularly if their supply chain, or it's impossible to get their supply chain to comply. There was a 3. My view on notification is, I don't know, for contractors to notify an event, provided the time period is long enough to notify the event. My view is you shouldn't die in a ditch over it, although every contract is different. If it's 5 working days or something stupid like that, yes, I do agree. But if you've got, I would tend to often focus on the length of time rather than the CP per se. The issue is with substantiation, because substantiation can take a long time, it can take a short time, who knows how long it's going to take. And I've had issues with this from both sides. Contractors time bars on substantiation where it's practically unworkable and results in basically impossible outcomes. But I've also had it from the client's perspective where they don't want fabric or inflated prices just for the sake of some silly, artificial 10-day work, whatever, hard time bar. So in any event, conscious decision making needs to be made, done with condition precedents. Yeah, both ways. Payment entitlement, yeah, I touched on that. Practical completion, I'll just very quickly. PC, by its very nature, certain condition precedents need to be achieved in order to do it. The work stuff, normally fairly fine. I mean, you might have a debate as to what's a material defect, what's a cosmetic defect, etc. Fine. Again, sufficient detail on certain projects need to be paid to that. Maybe for hotels, for example, higher level, others are more chilled. Documents, though, you can't afford to be lax as a contractor, and this is a key area on both sides where it has been a bit of a pain come PC. And I'm thinking in particular with warranty requirements. I mean, there's a usual battle regarding CPU and CCC, whether that should be a CP or PC. But warranties, I mean, it's common to have a warranty schedule that sets out 100, 200, whatever warranties. And it's quite common for contractors to be unable to obtain maybe 1, 2, whatever. Client to that 4-year point where you go, you know, it might take years later. I mean, the party that signed up on day one, they're like, fine, yeah, would be totally chilled if the contractor came and they did use all reasonable, whatever. They used all their endeavours, but they couldn't achieve they gave us 12 or they gave us 10. Okay, we can live with that. It might change. You have someone else doing it at the end who doesn't know what was signed up to at the outset and saying, oh, contract says 15 years. And they go to their lawyer and they say, oh, what's the contract say? And the lawyer will say, well, it's an absolute obligation. Then the ETC will say, oh, can I sign off without the client signing off? Like the ETC can't take a view and say, oh, yeah, no, it's all good. At best, you need the client to basically waive that requirement at that point in time regarding, and it could be things like change in the market, it could be all sorts of things. It might be that their original warranty was never obtainable, but what contractors is it puts them at risk of liquidated damages possibly, although they can often leverage the client because clients will not want to delay occupancy for the sake of a warranty often, although some might. The key the bond and retentions, it ties up your bond and retentions for longer. It can be an issue. So pay attention to those. And I'll just rattle through the rest of these quickly. Absolute they say in the tin, you shall, you must, you whatever. If you don't do it, you're in breach. So if that's tied to any particular consequence, like bond release, retention release, PC, pay more attention. This means you need to work against your own commercial interests, so that can also be bad for you. So you sign up, I would generally, and on my top 20 list, I had contractors overseas that are often resist vehemently any best endeavours obligations. All reasonable endeavours, similar to best endeavours. Reasonable endeavours, softer obligation, again, can stick you, but not as bad. Finally, final other points, noting there's endless bad special conditions, but just focusing on a few. Bond call triggers. Now, this is another area where it amazes me that in practice, contractors don't put more belts and braces around this. New Zealand, it is market to procure an on-demand performance bond. Overseas, when I was working in the UK, for example, unless you're doing an international project, if you're doing the usual vertical space, fit-outs, whatever work in, you would often have to get a proven default bond, which would often require that the client would go to court, go to arbitration or go to adjudication and get an award. Otherwise, the bondsman wouldn't pay out. New Zealand, it's a weird factor of the market here that they are all on demand. When you're acting for principals, you don't mind, but I've never quite understood why contractors, I mean, it is the market. But, I mean, the key way against this would be to increase the bond call trigger within the contract between the parties. Clause 3 of 3910, for example, I would focus on ensuring it's a material default, any breach. ensuring or it's insolvency or some significant event so that you don't have, and again, when I advise, speaking openly, clients in this scenario regarding this, I don't tell them to do it lightly because I explain to them the impact it can have on contractor balance sheet and credit rating and all that sort of stuff, destroys relationships, etc. However, there's always the possibility that doesn't care or doesn't have that empathy or just doesn't bloody understand it. So if I was to give a top 20 list to include on there, I would focus on increasing the bond release threshold to a material default. You might not get it, but again, I just wouldn't want to leave access to bond to any irrational client to call on the bond. Time cost risk from damage to contract works. So interesting feature of 3910, and this is one thing that often goes under the radar for clients, is under clause 10.3.1, the contractor gets an extension of time regardless of fault for loss or damage to the contract works. So I give Sky City as the example, and I don't know what the conditions were there, but if you use as an example, the unamended 3910, no amendment, Fletchers would get an extension of time. According to the letter of law, they wouldn't be hit with liquidated damages even if whatever subby was at fault. Now, the rationale, the guidance notes of 3910 don't provide a clear reason for that. My assumption, based on overseas and commentary on similar provisions, because JCT has an equivalent one, which is UK, is that in theory the client can take out delay and startup insurance. They are in position to insure their own losses. The contractor, generally speaking, can't insure the client's only delay. In practice, clients never do it because it's too expensive, and you only typically see it on PPP or equivalent size projects. So in practice, from a client, I always advise them to modify that to reflect their insurance reality, which is that they're not insurance, therefore the loss or damage should be split according to who caused the damage. For contractors, I wouldn't necessarily just roll on that though. That would be my comeback when acting for contractors. When I've acted for contractors overseas, this has likewise been on their top 20s list on the basis that they would say, yes, we are probably better placed to manage the risk, we control the operations, etc. The reality is though, and if it's a week before PC and they burn down the entire building, my balance sheet can't withstand a year and a half, 2.5, whatever the rebuild period is, they can't withstand that level of liquidated. So the comeback often from contractors, or what I advise them to do, is to reach a solution which either results in a liquidated damages subcap, which reflects that their balance sheet is finite and they can't stand under the sun, or we agree a carve out to what a delay and startup deductible would cost if the client took it up, which is 6 to 8 weeks. So yeah, I'm just saying, if you're a contractor, keep it on your radar. Client, keep it on your radar. So yeah.
Thanks, Jordan. Huge amount of material and advice in there, not non-legal advice that we're taking in. Yeah. Darragh, what would you add into the understanding the fine print space?
I think the condition precedent conversation is a very interesting one. I think this comes down to the team the contractor has. I talk about it in the engineered contract space. I know for a fact that in space there is no contract administrator that they have. It's a QS or a commercial manager or whoever that is, and that commercial manager or QS could be procuring 100 subcontractors while also looking at the upstream, looking at the downstream. The condition precedents there, and I suppose timelines on submittals on notices for variations or extensions of time, they can be looked at as a penalty clause, but they're really there so the principal can understand, well look, we have 100 grand coming our way and we know it in a 20-day period from when it was first known about, or whatever that looks like. So like it's hard, it's sit in, you view them clauses differently. A good friend of mine who works with Naylor always said to me that if someone doesn't like you in construction, you might be not a nice person, but more than likely it's because you're doing your job and administering the contract. Yeah, that kind of condition precedent side of things is really interesting. I think resource-wise, we're seeing, especially back in government clients, now the government tap has been switched off the past while, but what we saw as ETCs and in that a contractor would sign up to a government contract, whether that being whatever government organisation you'd want to see, and that team that they would have on it would turn over maybe in a 2-year space. So the person that you would have seen on that from the start would have turned over and a horrible amount of times to the end. So therefore, you can't bring them conversations and whatnot for it, and that's why key personnel clause in contracts at the moment, locking in on a contractor's basis who that team's going to be and principle. But it's tough to talk about them sort of clauses when you've signed up to them and you just need to manage them. Normally that's with extra people who are experienced enough in administering them clauses as well. So I think Jordan did a really good job of bringing them all together. So hopefully you haven't burned yourself with any clients now or anything like that.
All right, we might switch into 3910 for a bit before we take a break. So, Joe, I think you were going to us a rundown in terms of the purpose. But first of all, is anyone in the room using the new 3910? You are. Great. Joe, tell us.
I feel quite fortunate that 3 of our clients are using the new 3910 and successfully, and it's been a really good opportunity to test it and we'll do our homework. So I thought it'd be a good way just to kind of say, hey, are you aware of it? Have you done your homework? What are the major changes? I'm sure by now loads of people have already been to an education session. If you haven't, please go to one. There's so many. It's fantastic. So obviously it's a 2023 contract. We are now in 2025. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've made recently about this contract to find out who is using it, and it seems to have quite. And even talking to the panel, we found the same between us as well. So the contract was revised. There's a whole heap of industry experts that have revised that contract, and they've put a lot of time and energy into it. And I think personally, that we all start to embrace it and realise that we have a new opportunity here. So the intent of the change was actually to say, we have an industry accepted contract, let's keep using that but tweak it so we don't have quite so many disputes. I'm sure we'll have a good discussion in a couple of years. The other intent was to reduce the need for special conditions and close out some of those niggly questions that we all have every single time we go into contract. Again, we'll test that in a couple of years. I think there's definitely more clarity in the contract and people are understanding what their roles and responsibilities are, which personally I think has been done better, which falls onto that roles responsibilities. I think if people are responsible for, then the risk allocation sort of feeds from that and we all understand where we are. And really just taking it back to a nice little typo there from construction sector accord. It's really about embodying really here to do, right? We should be collaborative, we should be fair, and we should all be productive. That is the industry that majority of us want to work in, and I think it's just good to recognise that that's the intent of the 3910 changes, to keep that, that behaviour and build that trust so we don't feel uncertain going into contract.
Great. So tell us how you managed to convince your clients to use it.
Private clients always helps, and in honesty, value contracts as well, which is quite exciting. So one of the contracts is about 30 million and it's got a real nice blend of I say it nice because I'm a QS and I find it really interesting. We have some lump sum and we have some target cost work, and that is a really complex position to be in as a contractor, as a QS, as a project manager. For us it's really fun because there's actually some complexity, some good conversations, and we'll probably the target price. Has anyone here worked on a target price contract? Super complex? I love it. I mean, it changes the goal. It starts some really good, transparent conversation, but it is difficult to administrate, and I think we all need to be aware of that and do our homework. Yet again, please read up on it if you haven't already. It's a great mechanism. It does create transparency. It's just making sure we go back to what the intent of a target price is, and that intent is to improve efficiency on site. And if we give contractors that opportunity, 99% of the time, that's exactly what they do. This just allows them to share the benefit. So it is slow, but it is increasing. Like I said, the target price stuff's really good. One contractor's used a blended model, and that's the whole point of the new, draft. We've also got it on a measure and value earthworks contract, so it's still quite practical. And we've also had it on a fixed lump sum price as well. So it is working well. Because we're all a bit uncertain, I suppose, we're actually all reading it a lot more and just going, oh, did they clarify that? Yes, they did. Fantastic. So, yeah, in my opinion, it's good. Interesting, public sector struggling. There's a lot of lawyers, in-house lawyers in particular, that would like to draft their specials properly. They're waiting for the big private companies to draft their specials, and we get the trickle through. I think it's really a matter of who your clients are and where they stand. As I said, education phase. If anybody would like to talk about the new contract, target price, please get in contact. It's something I'm super passionate about. And I think we should all to read up about it. And yeah, it's the target price. It's a whole new world. And I think it's just an exciting opportunity to do something different. We can get in that same odd pattern of lump sum, fixed price, take all the rest. So, well, really? In current climate, that's really difficult for contractors. I mean, one of the problems I'm seeing is really poor scoping from clients. So we've got a poor scope. We've got a contractor who's not making the margins they used to make. Price lump sum again? Or let's try and do something differently. And that's where a target price has got its benefit. But you do need to be aware target price is a cost reimbursable contract. And I'd like to say to the QSs in the room that, from a client side, the first thing I do is sit down with a contractor and say, hey, do you understand what this means? How are you going to present this information to me? I don't want 1,000 invoices a week coming over my desk. It's not really going to help anybody. So we're trying solutions, and that's exactly what we should be doing as QSs. Do I need to check every single timesheet? And so we'll sit down with a contractor. Hey, what do you have? Sit down with a client. What do you need? What are we trying to achieve here? How do we reduce the risk? Contractor's perspective, really think about what you are able to open up and willing to open up. It's not a comfortable position having to open your books on everything, and I don't think you should be expected to. If you've got an area where you're feeling uncomfortable, clients are pretty open, and the new trend I'm on allows us to do that, so lean into it.
Thanks, Jo. We're just going to look now at key implications, and Darragh, you're going to give us a rundown. What would be great is if folks are thinking about their 3910 questions, because after this slide, we're going to have a break. And if you haven't got a question, I'll just have to give you one instead.
That's okay. That's okay. If there's no questions, that's all right. Really nice to hear Jo talk about the 2023 version in a very positive manner, collaborative manner. I think exactly that's what it was set out to do. Have they done that in every corner of the pages in 3910? Probably not. And there's some, I suppose there is some big issues with it as well that need clarification. I think the whole point of it was obviously to be collaborative, definitely, but was to take the specials away. Target price, one of them things is that target price needs a lot of specials to make sure clear that where the pain gain sits on what that looks like and substantiation, etc., etc. But I think it's really nice to hear Jo about the contract in a whole. See, the biggest change and one contractors are still moaning about is the ETC role, the engineer to contract role, and engineers reps. So that role now is switched into a definition of two roles: the independent certifier, acting independently and impartially decision maker, and the contract administrator, acting for the principal. So the contract administrator issues contract instructions, and agrees VOs and EOTs by mutual agreement if they want, outside of the actual contract clauses themselves. And again, when I talk about this, it's of the standard 3910/2023 with no specials. So this the IC, independent certifier, reviews and makes decisions on VOs, EOTs when the CA and the contractor cannot agree. So really the crux there now is that the contract administrator has a massive role in the contract at the moment. So they really are, for all intents and purposes, judge, juror and executioner within the contract at that time. They can agree through mutual agreement variation time. If there is a dispute between both parties, then that goes up to the independent certifier, who is that ETC role, but kind of hovers even more so now, I would say, than the engineer to contract version, which is very hard to price, by the way, as a consultant, because clients, like everyone, like they do with contractors, they want the lowest price from us too. So it's very hard to price something there when we don't know how involved we're on the project, depending on how good that CA is. The CA, yeah, again, has a much larger role. It does not have to follow technically the contract. It can do it through mutual agreement. But yeah, it's hard to see who fulfills that contract administrator. Internally in TBIG, we see this as actually a really senior role, and someone who really needs to understand that if they are agreeing a variation, time, whether that's a very small one or very technical, needs to have a lot of experience in construction at the moment. Therefore, that will cost more to the principal. So sometimes that is a bit of a non-starter. Another thing we're seeing there now is the relationship between the CA and the IC. So is the independent certifier and contract administrator going to be in the same company? Should there be a clear line of the contract administrator is in a different the independent certifier, to make sure clear cut that there is that impartiality there? Your big consultant firms, I'm not going to name them, but normally they'll have the ETC, the rep, the Q, all in-house, and you'll get the same answer all the way up. That doesn't work. So we really want to see their clients making informed decisions, mature decisions in regards to that. Has anyone got any questions in regards to just as I go on? That's kind of more so where I've got to with that. Joe, have you seen it work like that on site?
I'm finding everyone sort of starting to find their feet of the role. No one wants to be called the CA, which is that administrator title people aren't really enjoying. It is what it is. And personally, we've found it interesting how the QS fits in. So the QS becomes an advisor often, or an IC, issues the payment schedule. And so it's also trying to find ways to do that economically. As a consultant, you don't want to load people up. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, the advisors part is something there that is the drafting committee really wanted to bring in, because everyone 13, more than likely there's going to be a PQS recommendation. Now, technically there was, the PQS is not a party to the contract in 2013, so to sort that out, they've brought in this clause here, an advisor clause, authority to issue instructions or make decisions. They can make submissions and recommendations to the ICCA, and I think we all know that this clause was built for the PQS, predominantly to be part of the contract and feel a part of the contract and give them recommendations towards. Obviously Joe's talked about the target price mechanism. There's one clause actually I just really want to touch on to show that collaborative. It's clause 13.11, and it's in regards to dispute resolution. I'm not too sure, Jordan, if you've had a look at this one, but it says, and I don't want to read it verbatim, but before referring any matter for dispute resolution, members of each organisation will endeavour to negotiate in good faith. Now, I've had a person on the drafting committee explain this to me, and they explained it very well, and I'm going to butcher it here now, but it was, if you have on both sides of the fence and they want to do a good job and they don't want to hand off up the chain a dispute that they've had, and we all know when you get close to a dispute back and forth, it becomes personal. maybe pushing it up the chain, someone else looking at it can have a bit better of a view and maybe, look, we'll agree to disagree 50-50, 60-40, whatever that looks like. So I think that's a clause that's really showing the collaborative nature of 3. Now, the lawyers have gotten their hands on this clause, and it's been disputed now if one must do this or not, and you cannot make anyone go into a negotiation in good faith or not take the side they want to take on that. So, yeah, the lawyers are picking that one apart at the moment. Liability indemnity, I think we've talked, Jordan has talked about that. There's a cap there now, brings it in line with. Yeah, liability indemnity, I think that's a very clear one. The early warning one is a really interesting one. I saw a person who does all 3910 trainings in asking in the 2023 version, there's actually 3 parties that can issue an early warning. And early warning replaces advanced notification. Advanced notification is what the 2023 version says, is what the 2023. So each party, which is the principal, contract administrator and contractor, must write a notice if they become aware of any matter likely to alter the cost or time of the project. Now that's really interesting, because that would the contract administrator would look at a VO and go, geez, that looks like a big VO. I think I'm going to issue an early warning here to the contractor to say that, look, potentially there could be a time and cost implication to this. So it's all there going on it, but will it be administered that way, or will it happen? I don't know. I'm sure we'll see. Maybe you have, Joe, have you?
It has been amazing. Yep. Effective because it's there in black and white. Everyone knows the terminology. It's been quite helpful to say to contractors, please submit early warning notices. Don't be scared. And it's really started those conversations, and especially as you said with the client. Have I issued one? Yeah, not yet. Give me a chance tomorrow.
I'll definitely be more of a believer if the contract administrator issues something to the contractor that says, look, you're more than likely going to be late, more of a cost to it. But look, I think hopefully it will be taken up more. Hopefully the specials decrease, and we've a lot of hope for it. But again, we're just not seeing it. The Building Intelligence Group, or the company that I work for, have offices all around the country. I think we've a handful of these that we administer. So yeah, but again, it's been it's for collaboration, and I do think it is a good contract when it gets going. It's just about when it gets going, I think, is the question. Yeah. Any questions there, guys? Go on ahead there, mate. Yep.
All parties. I've experienced in a few arbitration and type of disputes where typically the contractors do not issue notices for delays, or mainly for delays, and there's timeline. And comes to the end of the job, they start wrapping up all the delays from day one. And what the cases that I've been involved with, where the judge said, you as the project manager were involved on a day-to-day basis. You knew they were going to be late. You did nothing, even though there's no evidence that there was a notice by either party. But being silent and hiding behind the contract for time by notices just went back and bit basically the client rather than the consultant. But where does the consultant's liability lie? Because they were purely hired to behind the contract and went silent. And obviously because all of the client was stuck on money, and quite often I see where the clients always try to push back that because of the delay, and there's no innocent contractor, there's no innocent principal. But unfortunately, everything gets dealt with at the end of the job, and sometimes years after it's been finished. So when a judge say time is left there because there was someone who was involved on the job on a day-to-day basis, where does the client lie here in terms of liability for consultants?
Well, I suppose from an engineer to contract standpoint, I'd more than likely give him a call straight away if someone contacted me about that. But We administer the contract. So we have a contract with the principal. Now we have insurances. The ETC is a natural person. It's a person, not a company. So my name is in the contract, so it comes directly to me, and the company that I work for pays my insurance on it. Now we administer the contract, and we will stand over any. We have no say in regards to what happens after the project is finished, and if someone enacts arbitration or whatever them dispute resolution clauses, once it goes outside, we're done as an engineered contract. Now I'm not too sure from a PM or quantity surveyor standpoint or architect, but as far as I'm anything what I do if someone's coming after to say that I did not issue a notice to someone. It's a difficult question. I don't think it actually matters more towards me. I would assume now it's going to be the CA, the PM, the QS, the architect. So Jordan, this one over to you, mate, for triple CS.
Well, yeah, basically. What was in the scope? Nothing. Oh, no liability. So just this is a scenario where they've held that the time bar doesn't apply or does apply. It does not apply because the party on site got notice, not formal notice, but they knew about what was happening, so that they can't formalities of the contract. Okay. And had the contractor so did the contractor launch a global claim at the end, or okay. Yeah, no, they give you a very lawyer's answer. That's a very incredibly difficult answer to give a definitive answer on. But yeah. No, I won't. 600. No. Just that in terms of the liability one, it is a very difficult one. The legal, to answer the legal, I think it's a couple of things. The legal question will often come down to whether there was a breach of reasonable skill care the relevant party administering the contract. The arguments that will often be advanced by the other side, and I wasn't part of this, but my assumption, we had slides, I don't know if we'll get to them on this, but the program is a pain in the arse in practice, and keeping the program live, getting the contractor to submit updated programs, that's a key issue. So yeah, the liability would come to whether they exercise reasonable skill care. The consultant will often say there was a time bar. The reasonable engineer or whoever would assume that would apply, and assume it would apply to the letter of law, and we wouldn't have some judge coming and overruling it on the basis of waiver or stop or associated equitable rubbish remedies, actual remedies. But these are the arguments that will be run. But yeah, in practice, it is a difficult one. In those scenarios, and regarding the program, delay analysis and all of that. I mean, our key areas where we find very difficult are the scenarios where contractors haven't been given or updating programs as they go. To retrospectively assess delay is almost like, it's like magic to me anyway. I don't know how you do it after the fact. And I don't know, that might go into the reasonable skill care assessment as well. Resulted in the client incurring additional money doesn't necessarily mean that the PM was negligent. You can't guarantee a client will do that, but often what we would say is it's good practice to often give notice if they missed a time bar to say, look, this has been missed. You can either choose to waive that time bar and say, look, you've missed it this time. We're not going to enforce it. We'll give you another 10 days, 20 days or whatever. To do that, then be silent, because that kills any arguments from litigators to say, well, you've deemed to have accepted it, you've waived your right to rely on the T's and C's. So in terms of strategy, I wouldn't just rely on the terms. In an ideal world, I would usually recommend on a non-reliance, non-whatever basis that it's good to be active. And if the contractor's not compliant, give them notice to let them know they haven't complied, and down chain subcontractors, etc., to say there's a condition precedent thing, and often clients in practice won't enforce them as the project's going because it's a cut off cash flow, etc. But you don't want to wait. Often get to the end and have clients think, "Oh, I thought the contract entirely protected me. It's your fault it didn't." And then, I mean, that's what I'd say. So, yeah.
I'm going to jump in. Oh, sorry, we're just well overdue for a break. But there was one other question. What was the other question?
It was maybe just a fundamental misunderstanding, but from an existing ETC, the separation of role, do you think that the independent certifier will get closer to a project or further away, or is it neutral?
Further away, it would be my knee-jerk reaction. And that's not necessarily, it's funny now what I'm going to say here now, that's not necessarily bad if what they're looking at and they can be fully impartial and independent. So it would, we're talking about not being like projects that I have, I'll be at obviously the PCG, we might be at a bi-weekly meeting, we'll be at as much as we can be and as much as everyone wants us there, obviously of course, like, but it definitely would be further, 100% definitely, because our involvement in the project is very, very slim to what it used to be in regards to that. So it is by drafting, it's an adjudicator technically, an adjudication really, because the CA and the contractor cannot come to an agreement on a VO or an EOT, so it just gets pushed up the chain. So yeah, further away, but that could be good. You'd have to say they're only going to be as good as the dispute or what the substantiations are on the dispute. Because as they are further away, well, then they might not know the structural steel was supposed to go in at X date and that the intumescent was, there was a, this was the knock-on effect because they're not keeping up to date with the project, because they might not be at PCGs or these weekly meetings or whatever that looks like. So there definitely is negatives. Again, it's as good as how the substantiation is. But that's why the relationship between the CA and the IC is going to be so, because the CA is going to have to fight their corner and say, well, this is why we did not give entitlement for a claim. And the IC will have to go, well, you were right or you were wrong. And what that will be very interesting over the next few years.
I'm going to pass directly over to Raji.
Okay, so we're going to have a much shorter session. Thanks, Jordan. But maybe more informative. Maybe. We'll see. Unfortunately, I can't just go back and forth from the screen, so I'm not videoing. I'm just reading through. Yes. So design responsibility. Throughout the break, obviously the conversation was, it's quite black and white. I think I was having a conversation with this lovely gentleman from court. It is very black and white for a principal to go to the contractor that you did not follow the contract or what have you. There are less emotions, but there's quite a lot of emotions involved to the point that it never happens with the consultant. For their design responsibility, their advice, their coordination, their role that they're playing in this project. So first of all, the roles and responsibility in the project execution of a design, it starts not in the contract, it starts at the time of engagement. And I think Jordan alluded to every contract that the principal signs with the designers. In terms of their CCCS, it is a very bland CCCS. It doesn't have project-specific scope. It doesn't have the deliverables in it. So it kind of experience the designers are involved or consultant to form their own judgment and also give the lowest price depending on the client to give that. So it has started from the wrong footing from the get-go. Clients, I think, spend more time in actually giving, I don't know how many clients around do start with a project brief before even project is established, because project brief is setting the scene of what is it that the client wants, what are the key drivers, what are the key scoping. It's not like fully scoping. What are the benchmark that you're after? Are you want just having a bit more joint discussion on what before you go and engage a consultant. The same lies when you're going for the ECI. ECI, you have to be a bit more careful on, I'm just sorry. ECI can create design responsibility by stealth. I think, Jordan, you mentioned the stealth part, but I can only speak to the ECI responsibility in a design. If it's not defined, Savory Construction, do you guys participate in ECI more, or is it design and build more? So if the role is not described of what the role of an ECI is in a design process, it can become administrative tasks. You come and attend the meetings, you go away, you may provide information, you may not. There is not a lot of things that we can check off saying, yep, this was a good ECI or this was bad ECI. I think to hear more thoughts on it. But in terms of roles and responsibility of what that ECI role includes, that can be included into an ECI contract. And that could be based on maybe achieve a project savings of X percentage, or introduce time savings in the construction buildability, or get the accurate lead time assessment when it comes to a very time crunch exercise, not just attending the meeting. Usually what happens in ECI, because of the roles and responsibility, the pre-construction team comes on ECI, and it's not actually the construction team. So the learnings from the ECI, or what or a lady or a guy has said in the ECI meetings, does not translate into the actual construction. So that is a little bit of a trick on the ECI. But ECI should be seen on the project. So if a client wants to ECI, to be honest, as Jordan explained about the, I think was it top 20 risk assessment for whether a contract is a good contract for a contract, basically. I think as a client or project managers, I think it's a good idea to have a checklist of 10 things why you would want an ECI, if it's a straightforward project, or what are the complexity. What are you trying to get for you? It could be a CLT project, it could be sustainability, it could be anything. But in those instances, thank you. In those instances, we can be only achieved when there is good responsibility agreed. Design and build. Novation risk is poorly understood. I'm sorry, I'm reading it, and frequently mismatch in expectation. So design and build, the novation risk, if there are two scenarios of a design and build, one is the principal starts the concept, the resource consent level, and then get a design and build contract and novates the consultants at that point. Or there's a version where there is no novation, there is a straight design and build. It has the concept, it has a little bit of a brief, and the design and build contractor puts in their price. I think there is no, obviously the latter one is the most risky one. Have not got a good principles requirement document, or maybe you do, then it's a great outcome. But in the novation, it's usually the contractor needs to understand what accepting at a concept level. Not all the risks are defined. Not everything has been thought through. So the contractor has to assume a responsibility a bit more involved into the design. So probably a good way of assessing the liability. I'm not an insurance expert, but how the design is drawn and fulfilled. I think it would be quite a good exercise to pre-tender meetings with the designers, a bit more briefing rather than fully just going to straight tender. I don't know the context, Jordan, about the other elements mentioned. If there's anything, let me know. But if there are no questions on the legal perspective, yeah? You won't start, okay. But the other type of the design and build, where we do most of the commercial projects, the design and build contract starts with a CCCS contract with the contractor, And once the whole design is fulfilled, then they sign the actual contract, which is 3916. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. It happens. Darragh, you're experiencing one of them. So it is probably the most liability is on the principal, because there is no mechanism of when the price goes up or down. The contractor wins it all, in my opinion, but that's the model. Project management perspective. These are just written from we'll come to the CIC guideline, but the clash detection reports. So when a contractor gets a design, there is of seeing if the design is fully coordinated at a level that you guys expect to take it on and then build it at pace. So clash detection reports are something that designers, project managers should be getting it done, assuming the project is 3D modeled, which they should be in this. If any project is more than 5 mil, they should be. It's not a money issue. It's not even a time issue. That should be a basic baseline that the client consultants to do. And that's not just for the architect to do the 3D. It's for the services engineers. It's for the structure engineers. No one gets a buyout of it. It's usually just dumped on the architect. The 3D modeling and clash detection. I think everyone has a role in it, because let's be honest, the things that are clashing is not the actual architectural elements, it's the structure and the services with each other. So I've never seen a clash detection report to be put on a tender. And I think I'm advising the clients more and more to get the clash detection report into the tender. If you have a badly coordinated design, just contractor that we do not have a good coordinated design, because that's probably putting your risk assessment upfront to the to the contractor. We're not asking them to take undue risk, but I think that's transparency. As a project manager, I think the role is to make sure that it's not like us versus them. There's a big collaborative role. You should care, you should take ownership, and a good chance that project manager themselves don't actually understand if the design is coordinated or not. Clash detection is just one sure way of an outcome, whether the design is coordinated at the time of the tender. So maybe just probably it's a testing the market, whether the designers are ready to take the risk of putting their clash detection, that they have resolved all the clashes, drawn to the level of detail that is required in the 3D modeling, and agree to put it in the contract documents. And that starts with CCCS of whether the principal has actually asked the designers to sign up to their, as a part of their role, to provide link to meet a certain level of requirement. It's always retrospectively done, or can you also provide that? And I don't know if you have asked for a 3D model from an architect or from a services engineer during the construction. They will issue it to you, and they'll issue a waiver saying nothing drawn is accurate, and just because that's how they don't like to take the responsibility. I think as an industry we can push for it, and I'm not sure if anyone is BIM execution plan. BIM execution, if there's a large complex project you would have, but I don't think it's complex at all. It is just the execution plan of how a 3D model and handed over for the construction. It's actually should help the contractor. So I think it's a very slow uptake on that. So we talked about a lot about issues on the contract, on how the contract caused by design issues, RFIs issues. We have a chance, an opportunity to resolve that before it becomes an issue. Yes, it's very idealistic to say that, but not many designs are coordinated or given the thought. So a lot starts during the design phase, is all I'm saying. Rate of uptake from contractor for a full BIM project during construction. Would be keen to know if you guys do use the BIM during construction. Yes, and the most common answer I get is the subcontractors are not fully up to speed on the BIM or the 3D modeling, because they need to do the shop drawings, not all of a sudden, not just in AutoCAD, they have to do it Revit, and there's a cost to it. And again, horses for courses. If you don't have a medical project or a complex data center project, you don't need that. But we also don't need hand-drawn as-builts as well. So I think this should be a good in between combination of how the 3D modeling is undertaken. And I would actually doubt that whether the contractors even have a Revit license. Mostly they don't. Or they can use the free viewer, or maybe they do. So specification versus the details in the drawing set. What I mean by that is the specification takes the precedent in the 2013 version. It's all in the specification, nothing in the drawing. That is a very way of doing things. What project managers need to understand is what you have done is introduce a whole heap of uncertainty in the drawings. You have asked the contractor to take on way more risk. You have asked them to provide way more provisional sums. It's just typical detail into the specification. So challenging the designers during the design coordination process on what are the details that are best suited to specification rather than what are the details that can be put in the drawing. Because I think the actual outcome that the client wants is a clean set of drawings that helps the contractor to build it on site as fast as possible and as lean waste as possible. So why are we not putting more time on just making sure the drawings have everything that a contractor, because most contractor just runs away with the electrical drawing, doesn't carry the specification with them. Why can't we put the relevant information for the installation just on the drawing? So this is something that a project manager can drive, and if they have not driven, at least pull it back into the actual contract so that the principal and the contractor. And during the tendering, I think that one of the underutilized skill or something that a project manager should do is have that briefing meeting with the contractor. If it's a competitive tender, have a briefing meeting with the 3 contractors. Make them explain what the project drivers are so that it's a bit more than black and white 2D drawings. Make them explain what they are. Maybe if principal is engaged, the contractor would love that. Spend 30 minutes talking to the contractors. What are you trying to achieve? That would make a lot more difference on how you receive the tender. Yes, contract lawyers will protect each side, but this is the chance to set the scene from a good starting point. It's a collaborative approach. I would start with, hey, we don't have this level of this plan. Just say it out loud. I think that sets the footing for a good, honest tender, rather than everything is price built in. Role of bringing the proprietor or subcontractor in the design rather than leaving later during the construction. There's a lot of proprietary design in a design, so I would recommend to get those specialist subbies involved in the design phase, be it this issue on how the client can pay those subcontractors. Just pay them as a subconsultant. And subcontractors, please consider signing a CCCS contract for providing that level of service so that the client is not to sign for trade value of $500,000, but can give you just the expertise scope. And most of the subcontractor, don't worry about it, just put us in the tender. And that's where it becomes are you going to provide a good service or not? So I think we would definitely recommend the client to bring in those trade into the design. Sometimes the balustrade, sometimes the seismic design. They're all best understood by the actual trades who do the job. We on fire sprinkler, typical, like fire sprinkler, we bring the fire sprinkler guys to do the calculation so that they do the calculation, size the pipe and the height at the same time rather than redoing the design on day one when the single pipe has gone up or what have you. Importance of providing the IFC for any major changes. So if your consultants are providing, you sign the contract with it is what it is, you carry on with the job, and you raise RFIs. And those RFIs are responded through CAN with complex drawing sets issued or sketches issued. Please make sure you're requesting the designer to issue a full IFC updated with revision control. These are the things that the consultant is getting paid for. this is not actually adding extra cost. It's actually doing the job. So it is very unfair for the contractor to expect to be keeping a tab of all these drawings. If there are major changes, just expect the full drawing set to one detail on one drawing rather than the whole knock-on effect on the other drawings. So yeah. But main role of a project manager is just be empathetic, make sure it's a collaborative, and care for the contractor. I think your question was negligence on not negligence, like if you were aware of it. I think the most common issue I've come across is not that they trip each other. Sometimes the contractor does not know how to submit a extension of time claim and explain it properly because they don't know how much delay they have been caused. So that's where I think you can only help. But if you are getting collaborative project manager, it should never be gotcha. It should be always let's just get to the finish line.
We're going to flip all the cards and jump to this slide. And we'll go back to some of the earlier slides in a minute, just so we can get this part out to you guys. So I'm going to quickly talk about this slide, and then we'll look at the next one, and then go back to the earlier ones, and then really get into your questions. Very quickly, NZCIC is the New Zealand Construction Industry Council, and we are an association of associations, all about 31 other membership associations. Institute of Architects, Architectural Designers New Zealand, NZIQS, NZ Certified Builders, Master Plumbers, IPNZ, Windows and Glass. We cover the whole range of the sector. Across all our members, and which some of you are probably members, and if you aggregate all that, we cover about 70% of the construction sector. So if you go all the way down to the workers, there's probably about 200,000 people down there who are somehow connected all the way up to us. Chair, part-time is how we function. However, we've been going since 2004, and one of the things that happened right at the beginning of our journey was the development of the design guidelines, known as the CIC guidelines, which were simply a PDF in 2003, 2004 of a way to actually understand the roles on a contract. I'm going to hand back now.
Out of interest, has anyone guideline that Tommy is referring to? Good project managers, seen it, great. But that I still have a copy. It's bound, spiral bound. It's going to be there because that's my favorite guide. It lists out in a checklist format of what are the attributes a design should include at each phase, and this is quite important during the design management. You just design to get it all fully designed at the detail design. There is a reason there is a concept design. There is a reason that the progressive jumps to preliminary. In some instance, there is no preliminary. There is and developed. So design straight, we'll do it in detail design. If the consultant is saying that, please report to the project manager because that is not acceptable. Because as a PQS, they are doing also estimates during, and if the design is all fully done in the detail design, there is no certainty whether the budget is going to be as per expectation or not. So the horror stories, project has finished detail design and then they're going into value engineering, happen way too often. And in most cases, it actually doesn't have time for value engineering. Or let's just get out the tender drawing, let the contractor do it, and they come with a mishmash, and the IFC set is completely different to the actual tender drawing. So anyway, let's not do that if we can. And that version of the CIC guideline in 2016, this is so academic, Tommy. 2016 version split the requirements of CIC into responsibilities. In each phase, and the responsibilities, engineer to the architect, to the interior designer, to the electrical, to the mechanical, to hydraulic, everyone has their own responsibility. But the trick is, it is a template. You need to make it for your project. So if you guys are thinking you've never heard of it, please ask your project manager to get a project-specific CIC guideline. And they should have done it, not at the time of starting the project, at the time before, so that they can put that in the triple CS. My brain is not working. Okay.
So in 2016, it had an evolution. It was still essentially a paper document that described these responsibilities. And around about 2020, it was decided to develop a dynamic digital version. And a big project was launched, big industry-wide project, and we got great funding from the CSA, $1,000 to develop the dynamic online version, which was launched 2 years ago in November 2023. It sits in the master spec world, but it's free to anyone to use it. You don't have to be a master spec client. You can an account and use them. And the idea is that you populate the guidelines for every project you want and the way that you want to do it. Because it's dynamic, it's digital. You can do having to photocopy a PDF and cross things out with lines. What people are doing is downloading it, turning it into a PDF, and never being dynamic anymore. But we are encouraging the kind of digital understanding of this use document, the guidelines, and we have also pretty much enshrined the idea of responsibilities. It's now called the NZCIC Guidelines Schedule of Responsibilities. So one of the really important things is someone who has a role understands their responsibilities. Now, of course, that's not always part of the contract. It's a guideline, but it helps people know what they should have done, so they can't say later, "Oh, was that on me?" Education, and I'm handing back now.
For those who have never seen what we are referring to, it's simply a whole bunch of tasks on, say, left-hand side of the ledger, and across there's all the to territorial authority, to client, to QS, and everyone gets either a dot or not. So if you have a dot against the project manager, NZCIC guideline is the only place where project manager. So, because project manager gives the task, but if there is a dot against you, which means you're responsible, and there are tasks where there are multiple dots, so it reflects the coordination required. So if it's a fire engineering, it doesn't say. So one of the beautiful thing is, as a project manager, it should excite you because you have now something black and white to go back to consultants that they have done or not. But what happens, I have not seen many project managers follow the IC guideline. How do you know your project is being designed to the level that is suitable for a contractor to price? I think as a project manager, the responsibility starts in understanding what you're actually putting out to the market, what you're putting out to the consent, and this guideline is really there to help you, not penalize you, but to help you. But if you put it in your consultant contract, you can penalize it as well. I've seen it done. Auckland Council do that. They say that they included in the, what they did was, in the consultant agreement, they put the typical standard CIC guideline, which meant that they had more responsibility than normally it would need to. So that's a good version. That's a good tool for a principal to get some control, because some of the frustration is consultants get off the hook. And it doesn't stop at the design phase. There is requirement phase on how to review the shop drawing. What are the time frames they need to be reviewing? What is the project manager supposed to do? So as a contractor, I think you should get familiar. I'm happy to do the conversation with you, okay, that this is what you can expect, or request the project manager to get it for you, because it's really there to help to put more accountability on the designers, which I think is a bit silent sometimes.
Okay, I wonder if perspective on this, because a document like this, the guidelines or a scope of services, it's not a legal document, right? But all these tools are clarifying with the client what they're essentially, and clarifying responsibility and risk. So, do you have any comment from a legal perspective?
Yeah, it is handy. This is on. Okay, good. No, it is handy. having a design responsibility matrix, as effectively this is I am thinking from a client perspective by default, because this is where I've sat when I've had to deal with litigation. Where you have a traditional procurement, I mean, allocating responsibility amongst designers is very difficult if you just have a very vague scope, and having this document is useful from that perspective, responsibility. But in terms of actually delivering a project, I mean, each party understanding at the outset where the responsibility sits so you can do a gap analysis, I mean, it is helpful and critical, and we normally, clients, when they do engage designers, have some form of CIC guidelines to do it. So, no, I'm in favour of it. Yeah, good.
Your term responsibility matrix, I think that's really good. We might return back to managing contractual risk and change. Is that all good? Yeah.
Managing risk and change. Program revisions are critical. Yes, they are. In both 2013 and 2023 versions of 3910, the program requirements just aren't well drafted in regards to what is a comprehensive program, and I think both, if I'm not mistaken, refer to, if the specials refer to the program as being comprehensible, then here's what you have to do with it. So I do think there's a big mix up now in what a program is. Now there's plenty that need to happen with a comprehensive program, tasks being less than 15 days and predecessors and linked and all that sort of good stuff. But it's really about getting updates on them programs throughout the there. I think Jordan said that if we're looking at an extension of time, well, what is the last program we're looking against to assess that extension of time? At the start of an execution of a contract, there's a baseline program, and that must be issued 20 days after the execution, and that sets the baseline going forward. Then more than likely it's going to be monthly with PCGs, etc., etc. So it's about making sure that everyone is being kept up to date with where you that time, and then if there's any notices of delay that needs to correspond with that, because I think as contractors love doing, it's like, look, we're in a small bit of delay here, but we think we can make it up. It's all good, don't worry about it. And I'm always saying at the start of a project, I have an unlimited inbox, gigabytes or whatever it looks like, so send me everything. Send me notices galore, send me everything you can, program updates, CI, send it all to me. I should be the one issuing CIs, by the way, so don't be sending me them. Yeah, the program updates are critical when it comes to that. The program allowances, float and contract requirements for extension of time, they need to be in the drafting of a contract. In regards to float, in regards to all these sorts of things, concurrent delays specifically. I know there was actually a case that was being referenced there at the moment where another ETC is referring delay in an extension of time assessment for why there's no entitlement. And then we've actually got some feedback on that. It's not within TBIG, but that you cannot mention concurrent delay in an assessment if it is not stated in the contract. So there's multiple different viewpoints on all this, but it needs to be clearly drafted. But again, these notices, keeping on top of notice of delay, then the extension of time is key. Program. I'm sure, Jordan, you've got multiple examples of how that's gone really wrong, and we've seen a lot of that as well. Is there any questions? I'm sure there is on program in regards to when it comes to that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Is the sequencing or the linking of a program contractual? So, like, is the entirety of a contract program a contract document?
If it's named in the contract document. If it's not mentioned there, well, maybe not, but normally it is. So you're saying, is it a contract? Is it contractual? Well, it all depends on what the requirements and obligations are in the P&G spec or the contract itself. Argue either or. If it's not stated to be, it's not, or what the definition is on comprehensive programs. We've just started quite a large project at the moment for a large client. There is 7 pages of what makes up a comprehensive. One of them being that in a single line item. So then it is a contractual requirement and you must comply with that. And that will link, and the reasons why that needs to happen and needs to happen to start is because more than likely my acceptance of that will kick off a few different things, and payment will be linked to that as well. So if you guys aren't complying with them and the principal requirements, and I do not accept that, well then more than likely your first payment will not be paid and all that sort of stuff. Like, so yes, if it is outlined in the contract, well then it must be complied with.
I guess it's probably like a pretty good question, but is that just the project? Because if we're talking, it's maybe different horizontal versus vertical construction, and I guess the ability to accelerate or mitigate risks of a project. If you were to be, if your contract program is a contract document from task to task to task, how as a contractor do you manage your willingness to mitigate when you're having to basically adapt the lines of the program and adjust that contract?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I suppose my answer will be this. I'm not here to tell you, although I probably will if we're doing an assessment on a variation or extension of time, right? So you're there to own your sequence of works. If you find that you can get some on rejigging that or whatever that is, 100% do it. Like, the key part there is the notice to that, or saying that to the client and issue a notice on that so we can be aware and updating the program. So when I ask you, oh, well, had this sequenced in this manner and you didn't do it in that manner because you thought you were going to get gains, where was I supposed to know that you were doing that? Well, I'm supposed to know from the old program updates and you telling me this. So again, like, I don't know how to build or what to do before each one of them. That's your risk and you're up to do it. I like to say the site possession, the PC and key dates and all that sort of good stuff and critical path. But I'm not going to tell you to start doing steel before this. That's up to you. Sense there. If it's open that, look, there was some gains to be made and there isn't any more, and that we will have to assess that in a reasonable and fair fashion, and my assessment would be so. Does that answer your question at all?
Have you received a notice of pacing? No. So like it's in there, right? Like you can notify on pace, which is I guess if you're looking at critical items of the project, and you're helping to resolve issues in one area and we're having to pace in another because it's going to be beneficial for the project. Have you ever had one, and have you ever had to handle it?
No, I haven't. The more than likely the major notice now we're seeing is that if I walk a site and I see that you're probably not where you're supposed to be on the program, I'll program as to where you actually are. I haven't, and I don't want to talk about it specific because there could be separate reports, could be this, could be that, there could be gains. I don't know, but I haven't is the answer. Hopefully I won't either because it doesn't sound nice. It sounds a bit complicated. So.
Overall, you're just not spending money up front to sit around later. As an
Definitely.
Let's go to our other question.
Oh, sorry, apologies.
Right. Yeah. And then we've got a couple more slides to go. You can grab Darragh afterwards, of course, as well.
Part of the comprehensive program, so that's fine, we can come back to it.
Good, Sharpie. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning about it later. Yeah, go on, yeah?
Would it be beneficial to kind of include and tender that what's the program level that we want to see? Because, okay, I don't want to see any negative flags, or I don't want to see any tasks that are floating and don't have any predecessors or successors, because you see a half price or half of the program during tender, and then you get into a signed contract where all these linkages, and then you get a comprehensive
100%, and it's really clear in tender to clearly define what you're needed with that P&G spec. Again, we went back to a contractor this week and I said, look, your comprehensive program is not a comprehensive program. NZ. They turned around and said, geez, it's a really good program though. And I said, yeah, it is a really good program, but it's not a comprehensive program under the contract. So we just need to give a bit more TLC to the contractor when it comes to that and say you've done a really good job, but it's not where we. So, but it's funny how you deliver them things. But definitely, and then just moving on then to use of early warnings. Definitely key. Look, we always say communication is key. Engineer to contract engineer rep on a project. My phone's always on, my email's unlimited, AConnX unlimited, Procore unlimited. Send everything you can. If I hear at the start of a project that a contractor says that we contractual, I will leave the meeting. I'll tell the principal we have a serious issue here, because if we're not wanting to be contractual, we're not wanting to play by the rules of the game. The problem is when someone goes, I'm only contractual or I'm not contractual. You have to have a relationship there, and you have to have the contractual element there as well. So there's a duality to them both statements.
Darragh, we might.
Yeah, if you want to move on. Yeah. Oh, so Joel, sorry, apologies, should have grabbed the feckin'.
Project managers QSs, Actually, just to stand by what you were just talking about, time is money. So it is super critical that each party listens to each other and works really closely. You would be QSs know we are in the detail of everything. So just keep that relationship up. Make sure that we all work together. That's when we deliver projects successfully. We're going through an example at the moment where, we're actually informing the scheduler. They notices have come in, but because they've come in through variations, the scheduler hasn't been notified. So the scheduler's going, there's no notice of delay. She put in, all these variations so far, and they have been notifying. So I think one, from a putting on your variation submissions, not quite sufficient for your scheduler, and also just making sure that PMs, QSs are all working closely together. Just wanted to make a note, make sure you know your scheduler quantities, the amount of contractors that send us. Sometimes they'll use the scheduler rates, sometimes they won't, sometimes they do this, sometimes they do that. Talk it through at the beginning and just have a sit down with the PQS. Hey, how does this work? What do I need to do? Is everyone comfortable? That's a really key conversation. We don't want to be adversarial by any means, so just have that upfront conversation. Regular commercial meetings, we sit down with our contractors, minimum fortnightly. It just keeps that relationship happy. We don't want to be in dispute at the end of the day. There's now on the new 2023 contract to close our final accounts within 20 working days of completion. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing, but the only way we achieve that is a good relationship all the way through. And just to remind everyone, forecasting's king. We can't get to the end of we can get to the end of a project and have an absolute fight, but it's just an absolute waste of everyone's time. So if we all bring our stories together, we'll forecast better, we'll mitigate, and we can actually deliver projects within those, what are the key drivers from a client's perspective? That's what we should be aiming for all the way through. And let's forecast against those key drivers, and that's how we're successful.
Nice, thank you. And we've heard from you both about managing contractual risk, specific reference to the program. We did one of these building legends on programming, I think it was earlier last year, so that's recorded and on our website under the resources section. So by all means, jump into it. And if you can turn it into a podcast and listen to it on your drive to work, which is substantial in Auckland, I understand. Look, we've just got two more things to touch on, and then we'll have some of the things we're seeing out in the regulatory environment. So, Raji, in terms of the client-side project management scope of services, this is a document that Building Institute Aotearoa worked on with project management. It's again sitting on the resources page. Raji, has anyone used it?
I don't think I think the word needs to get out more on how to use it. I will probably just talk, I think we've talked about the PM scope of service in many iterations throughout this conversation. But to answer, I couldn't not answer that question on the program. Sorry, I was trying to digressing here, but the program, as long as communicating it, and it is better for your resource planning, and if it's not affecting the critical path, I think there is the flexibility for you to do that. And if the critical path is affected, you have an obligation to notify to the engineer, to contract and principal. I don't think anyone don't do that. I think that if it has become that contractual, then lawyers have drafted it completely. The difference between a client-side PM, there is a distinct role of what a project manager gets engaged to be close advisor to the client on the highs and the lows versus their actual role in the contract, which is engineer's representative. It is a distinct role. One is more emotional role. The other is actually black and white role. So the project manager is juggling. But what they should not be doing is not do either of the role and just be quite not doing their work. So if the project manager actually calls you, nags you, or gives you more updates, it's actually a good thing because they care. And there is less and less in the industry that do that. The has a role of a governance role as well, because the client has only so many levers to pull to change the contract price. So as one of the key role of a client-side PM is to understand the requirements of the client. So if there is a variations on the contract, which there are, contract does not stop you. Once the engineer has given the instruction that it is a valid variation, please go ahead. A lot of clients are notorious for it. Their purchase order does not go up as swiftly as, well, I think it is swiftly compared to their role. That purchase order doesn't go up, and that shouldn't be issue or an engineered contract issue. That should be a client-side PM to understand that and to be able to navigate that with the client on what is required to make that jump go up so that the payment is not withheld. So usually it doesn't payment. It affects the final two payments when the variation has actually eaten into the project, the actual money. So that's a very key important role. One of the roles that project manager should do to understand the drawing, and I think we talked about it before it goes for tender, actually drawings, have a look at the specification so that you know what you're putting out to the market. Sometimes the first time the project goes out to the market, that has set the tone completely. The quality of the drawings, the contract has communicated a lot more than what you would anticipate. So if you do know that it's a not good design, quite principle-friendly contract, you should know that so that you can the further conversation, site visits accordingly. Most of the project managers should do it, but they sometimes don't, and they just pass the box. Yes. Yeah. Actually, while we were all talking, I think project managers should take time to actually take the principal and the consultant contract before it goes out to the market. I have never seen an architect or designer be a party to it, aware of it, their obligation, whether they have to review the shop drawing in 10 days, they don't know. So I think it's probably for not only the consultant team, spend 30 minutes educating them so that they know they're on the hook. Project manager's role in creating P&G specification. I think Darragh or Jordan, you mentioned that the P&G specification, all that. I don't think so. I don't know what P&G specification you guys are writing. Stay out of it, Jordan, because I think that is a very non-legal language in our view that sets out rules of the site. So if it is written very legally, then it's not fulfill the purpose of the P&G specification in my view. But those are the things that, what do you do before sending an RFI? You can include P&G so that it's a governance document, basically. Most projects don't have P&G specification or contract, sorry, but it's a good idea. Where can you put the hoarding? Don't talk to the public. Don't talk to the media. Things like that. Protects it, but they're very layman term written. RFI management process. Project managers can slow down the process because, they are at the mercy of the consultant. I would think the project manager's real role is to make it proactive rather than reactive. Don't just wait for an RFI to come. Or one of the actual proactive things a project manager can do is, when the contractor is undergoing through the construction, client is brewing with this major scope change. The project manager just guards it and does not share it with the contractor. And the contractor is like, it's going very smooth, and bam, the variation. Client is paying for it, but why secrecy? Get it to the contractor, get them on board. Hey, this is coming. Make sure you have resources available. So getting that proactive nature of what the RFI management process can look like. And also don't ask the project manager, don't ask to the contractor, which RFI you want to be answered urgently and what is not. If there is an RFI, you got to jump on it and don't make that excuse go. The consultant should not make that excuse. I think we talked about, and relationship management. I think the main role if you look at the project manager's qualification, they don't need to be qualified. The only role they need to do is get the conversation going, keep the I know it sounds quite, I don't know, trivial. Keep the collaborative nature going. When the conversation stops, the project goes quickly bad, in our view. And that's on both sides of the project management, client side, contractor side.
Thanks, Raji. I'm aware that we have all of 60 seconds. What I might do is give Jordan second to last word, and Tommy for the proportionate liability update.
Yeah, I'll just rush through this quickly because I don't want to go over time. Yeah, we're commented on CCC and ASEN's the short form. I mean, yeah, the NZIA forms. I mean, I generally acting for clients, tell clients to stay well aware of them or away from them due to the imbalanced risk profile. If you're a contractor, I'd be careful with them as well. The other forms, yeah, I won't comment on. They're here, but they're not massively widely used. I mean, we hear collaboration forums talking about we need more collaborative contracts, like any. But again, to my point earlier, they require extensive PM client-side resource, and clients often don't have that, and they often don't want that, and they don't want the retained risk. Done this in the UK as well, which often endorsed as the official government contract. Whenever it was used, it was modified to look like a JCT, which is basically 3910 with lots of specials. But international contract, you'll only see it in dairy plants or automated plant processing projects. They won't use it for vertical or horizontal. And again, collaborative alliance-based models, same. NZCIC use them okay. They typically require a pipeline of relationships to enable you to get rid of liquidated damages and all that sort of stuff. If it's a one-off project and you don't have levers, clients won't go for it. That's it.
Okay, everyone, I'm aware that I stand literally between you and a drink. I'm standing because because I knee replacement and torn rotator cuff, and I am sitting on it. I seated. So I was going to tell you a little bit more about the whole landscape that's going on. Much better done with a drink and just 1 on 4, 2, 3, whatever. But the one thing I want to alert you to, major change that's coming to the sector, and particularly those in residential construction, is a movement that this government is making from joint and several liability to proportionate liability. Now the government's announced it, that the legislation will go to Cabinet in November, and they expect to have it operational by the middle of next year. NZCIC is very engaged and committed with about this to help our members, who you may belong to, understand what these changes mean. Essentially, under the simplest way to describe this, under the joint and several liability system, everyone involved in a project are jointly liable, severally, meaning all of them, for anything that happens or goes bad on a project, including the builder, the council, the BCA, the owner, consultants. But if one of them falls over, they pop out of the mix, and all of a sudden you've only got three parties liable, and the last one standing often is the council, and they pick up the tab and they increase our rates. So that has always been a problematic system. Proportionate means that every party is liable for their proportion of a project and must carry the appropriate professional indemnity, home warranty, or insurance, which means that even if they go bust, they are covered for that. It will only work if it's an unbelievably resilient and robust and compulsory and efficient system, and we have the support of the insurers who are going to stand up behind this. A system that allows people to opt out will weaken the whole system. And that's all I'm going to say, and we'll come back to you about this, because I know that next year one of these building legends will be only about this as we get close to this move. I'm handing back for the announcements of the drinking.
Actually, so the 3 specific pieces that we've heard from MB that will be put in front of Parliament by, you can't hear them up? Oh, sorry. Apologies. The 3 pieces that will be put in front of government for legislation in November are
it's all residential. So it's around PI insurance, home warranty, and a home deposit protection scheme. What industry is advocating for is actually we need a broader regulatory ecosystem uplift. We need a much higher LBP standard or grade, especially as we move into that self-consenting space. We also need to have a much more robust regime which is well funded, which has been really a bugbear for a really long time. I mean, like places in Australia, of course, you can have free and open access to all your standards, and there's some really interesting in industry with AI where you can literally phone a standard or phone, and AI can create that little bit of information for you. I know we haven't got time to get into the AI legal and contracts. We might do that one another time, because of course lawyers are indispensable and irreplaceable. But look, there is a massive amount of regulatory change working on every response from granny flats to goodness knows what over the last 12 months. Some of you will be aware of those. If you're deeply interested, you can go onto the NZCIC website and find them. Personally, I digest them best when they posts. Thanks, AI. Look, that's just the way that one's trending. So we've hit 6:05. By all means, if you want to stick around, the only other thing I wanted to just touch on is anybody not learn something new? All right. Did anyone not learn how contracts can be delivered more collaboratively? I'm just posing the negative. An idea about when the new 3910 might be used? We can always phone Joe, right? We've got contracts, and if you want any more advice on that, you've got a small smidgen of free time with Jordan. Otherwise, you know where to find him. We've talked about conditions of contract, design liability. We're hearing about the CIC guide, other applications. So hopefully everybody got a little bit of something new. What I would love is for us to please thank the speakers in the fashion we know.